Kathamesha agataha. Where from has it come and settled in our personality? Where from has it come? Have I acquired it out of my own choice? If so, when? Is it in this life or in my earlier life or still earlier life? Ultimately, everything is designed and preserved by nature. What about this bandhana or bondage? That is also designed by nature. Then nature will have to set it right also. So I want to know, katham pratishtha asya, katham vimokshaha. How long is it going to be there? And what are the root causes? Is it that we are nourishing this bondage? Where is it rooted? How can I extricate it? Katham vimokshaha. We speak of bandhana and many people say we should be delivered of. What is meant by the delivery? How will one know about it? How to bring about, instrument the whole process? Kosavanatma paramahkatma. People speak about Atma, the soul, and Anatma, the non-soul. What are these words? What do they mean? Atma, the self. What does self mean? Is my body the self? I feel sometimes it is not. Then what is the self? Do I have an existence other than the biological bodily level of existence? Apparently there is one. What is that? What is this mind like? Mind is not matter. Intelligence is not matter. Nor are they energy. So what is that supra-material, supra-energial level? What is that? Kosavanatma paramahkatma. Anatma means the non-self. Paramahkatma. Sometimes people say not Atma, but Paramatma. So how many are there? Is there anything like Anatma, the non-self, and Atma, the self, and finally the Paramatma, the supreme self? Are there three entities? We also hear that all are altogether one and not many. Tayor vivekah kathame taduchyadam. Tayoho vivekaha katham etaduchyadam. How to distinguish between Anatma and Atma, and Atma and Paramatma? So what is it that I am seeking from you, my dear sir? I am seeking from you discrimination, viveka, true knowledge, by virtue of which my intelligence as well as the mind will be equipped, will be enriched, will be empowered to make this discrimination. I will be able to know what is bondage and how can this bondage be undone, how liberation can be gained, and in the process what is the role that Atma is going to play, and how can I distinguish it from Anatma, the non-self? Just see what beautiful questions. Have you ever thought about it? All of you are educated, I know. Particularly, whenever you are able to hear an English talk or read an English book, it certainly means in our country a good degree of education. So I am sure that all the viewers of this Inner Spiritual Splendor series, you must have a reasonably good degree of education. With that educational background, you think, have you ever thought of this kind of an inner personality analysis? Why? Why? Are you all free? Can you say my mind is free, peaceful and joyous? It has got no fetters at all. I am a family man. I have a wife or a husband. I am a parent. I have children. I have brothers and sisters. But in the company of all of them, I have no stifling at all. I am breathing in freedom, breathing out freedom, and I exult in this freedom. Are you able to say so? I don't think anybody will be able to. I wish many are able to. I would like you to let me know, either by telephone or by writing, what is your situation. In your family life, in your professional life, in your household life, are you contented? Are you happy? Do you have any fetters or stifling at any time? Are you floating in the ecstasy of freedom? I would like to know. If not, why are these questions not taken up? Why did they not occur to you? Why did they not occur to you? Are you listening to me? Ko nama bandha kathamesha agataha katham pratisthasya katham vimokshaha ko savanatma paramahkatma tayor vivekah kathametaduchyatam. Srimad Bhagavatam says, Shabde pare brahmani cha nishnatam. Why Srimad Bhagavata says like this? When an inquiring disciple, a dedicated disciple, goes to the Guru and he submits in this manner, what kind of a question or questionnaire is it? Do you think an ordinary man, even when he has some self-realizational merit, he will be able to answer? He is bringing a lot of traditional elements here. What is bondage? How has it come about? How is it that it is enduring or getting perpetuated? What is the manner of getting released from it? What is the non-self? What is the self? What is the supreme self? How to discriminate between all this? Please tell me all about it. When such a presentation is there, unless the Guru is well versed in the scriptural exposition on the one hand, and he also has the strength of his own personal experience in the matter, I don't think he will be able to guide the seeker well. So there is a lot in being a Sadguru or approaching him as a true disciple. After approaching the Guru, what should be done? Tatra bhagavatan dharman shikshed gurva atmadevataha amayaya anuvrityayaihi tushyet atma atmado harihi. Srimad Bhagavatam is always a devotional text. Though it is devotional, as I told you earlier, coupled with devotion, it is also presenting spiritual and philosophical wisdom at every stage. And in order to access these and actualize these, Srimad Bhagavata also generates, instills and reinforces what? Dispassion. Bhakti, Virakti and Bhagavat Prabodha. These are the triple items Srimad Bhagavata constantly tries to inculcate. Tatra, after having gone to the Guru, Bhagavatan Dharmad Shikshed, he should start practicing. First of all, coming to know about what are the devotional or devotee characteristics. What was the enquiry from King Nimi? He wanted to know Bhagavata Dharmas. And the Bhagavata Dharmas are being presented here from one level to another level. The earlier dialogue was making it very, very clear. What clear? That Vishnu is not merely a product of imagination. Mahavishnu or Lord Hari is the very source and terminus of the whole universe. There is a process or an order of evolution. There is a counter order leading to devolution or dissolution. All these were explained. That means your understanding of devotion undergoes a thorough expansion, an overwhelming depth and loftiness also. Srimad Bhagavata doesn't want the devotees to be foolish nor to be narrow-minded. They want every devotee to be as stable as Himalayas and Mount Meru, as broad, wide and deep like the oceans. They must be as flexible and assimilative like the skies and the space. Tatra bhagavatan dharman shikshed gurva atma deivataha. Shikshed gurva atma deivataha. What does it mean? He should go to the Guru and consider the Guru to be Atma, that is his own self. His self he is not able to see. So in the Guru he must find a manifestation or a representation of his own invisible self. Whatever the Guru speaks will be the voice and articulation of his own self. Not only that, Deivataha. So far he might have been worshipping an external invisible God, mostly a matter of faith and imagination in his mind. Now he should find My God personified is this Guru. Guru is my God personified. He is also myself, assuming a human form. With this kind of an attitude, he should practice. Tatra bhagavatan dharman shikshed gurva atma devataha amayaya anuvritya amayaya. He should be absolutely innocent and straightforward. He must have an open heart. There should be no confusion. There should be no covering up. His relationship with the Guru should be absolutely open. The word used is amayaya, without any note of stealth, corruption or deception or covering. Whatever is in the mind, he should speak about it. Whatever is not in the mind, he should not claim and present. Anuvritya. He should serve the teacher in practically everything. If he wants some bodily service, you must be able to render it. If he wants some kind of an assistance in writing, help him. In speaking, help him. In traveling or taking him, help him. You must be available at any point of time for the Guru to ask you for any service. In fact, he should not be asked to ask. You must be able to willingly render. We are all born and grown in our family. In our family, first of all, our parents. Thereafter, brothers, sisters, and further. With all of them, we have an over-abiding familiarity. And familiarity is likely to breed contempt. So children sometimes will refuse the parents, scold the parents, charge them with so many things. This is the type of relationship and sensibility that we have. When you go to a Guru, all this should be replaced by an altogether new note of sensibility and refinement. So in serving the Guru, you should not wait for any kind of a reminder, etc. There are three kinds of disciple, they say. The best disciple is one who will not have to be told anything. He will constantly look at and observe the teacher. And whatever are the requirements of the teacher, he will foresee them and make arrangements. If the time for him to speak or write has come, he will find out what are the things he needs. A table will be set, a chair will be set. If there is a book, that book will be presented there. Maybe some other convenience, writing pad, pencil or pen. Suppose he is going to write. What is the subject he is going to write? What are the books he is going to refer to? All these should be thought of. The mind should not be idle. You must be sensitive. So without having to say, the disciple will start serving the Guru. He will maximum take a month or so for observing him and understanding his needs and sensibilities. The second type of disciple is, he will have to be told, yes, bring me my pen, take this book, I am going to speak, make this arrangement. He will have to be told and reminded. The third person, the third type of disciple is, even when you say, he will not be able to do. And there will be always dejection. So, that willingness to serve is something very important. What you are unable to rear or grow or cultivate at home, you must be able to cultivate in the presence of the Guru. So understand it very clearly. An ashram or a spiritual abode is an abode of refinement, austere refinement. Is an abode of sensitiveness, sensibility. Everything should be spick and span here. So many people will be coming. They have a comfortable home, maybe sometimes luxurious home. They are coming to the ashram. What for? To have the benefit of the austere association with the teacher. We should understand it. And the people who are living with the Guru, they must be very sensitive to the arrival of guests, make them feel comfortable. We must be able to present an atmosphere which excels that of the family and home. This is what I always say in our ashram. Everyone who comes here from the house should feel, here is an abode, here is a place which excels what we have. In fact, this is the way so many people who come here, particularly for the first time, say, They are amazed by, sometimes surprised by, whatever activities are going on, a number of buildings, everything is, we try to preserve them, keep them in good condition, etc. So I think there is a lot. So here, amayaya anuvritya. In every aspect of the Guru's life, you must be able to share and help. Anuvritya yeihi tushed, by virtue of which tushed will become happy. Atma atmado harihi, by your Guru Seva, who is going to be pleased. The Guru may not express any note of appreciation for you, because there are instances when a disciple is given a proper evaluation, either he will be displeased or he will be proud and conceited. Very, very difficult, Baba. It's very difficult. So he may not be able to give you an open acknowledgement. But mind you, Atma Atmado Harihi Tushed, by your loving and endearing service to the Guru, your own inmost self is going to be happy, contented, and that will pronounce its blessings. Atmado Harihi, the Parama Kalyana Nidhi Hari, Lord Hari, Atmadaha, who is waiting to bestow upon you the kingdom of the self, he will also be pleased. So Guru Bhakti, Guru Sangha and Guru Seva. Devotion to the Guru, intimate association with the Guru, and worship or service to the Guru. All the three are for your own benefit. It is not to benefit the Guru at all. And this is the truth of idol worship or worship of any kind also. Whenever we offer worship to anyone, including the deity or God, that God is not going to be happy or contented by your service. You yourself are going to be happy and contented. Every action proceeds from the actor. It is an expression of the actor. And the actor is the first and last person to be benefited by what he does. Let us be very clear about it. Tatra bhagavatan dharman shikshet guru atma devataha amayaya anuvritya yeihi tushet atma atmado harihi. Now Prabuddha continues to say, Sarvado manaso asangam adau sangam cha sadhushu dayam maitrim prashrayam cha bhuteshwadha yathojidam. When I was reading this portion, I was so very impressed by what all this Srimad Bhagavatam does, what all our scriptures are doing. In Bhagavad Gita you will find, in the 13th chapter, from 13th to 18th, 6 chapters are devoted to the enunciation and enumeration of wisdom and sadhana details. And in the 13th chapter, Sri Krishna is listing 20 qualities and virtues. After enunciating 20 qualities and virtues, he says, Etad jnanam iti proktam. He says, it is not my word, proktam. These 20 together constitute the entire spiritual wisdom and glory. All the rest is ajnana, he says. Etat jnanam iti proktam, ajnanam yadatonyatha. Everything else is ignorance. So our jnana is not a pointed jnana. It comes to you in the form of an enrichment and embellishment. Though it is an enlightenment. We are coming to know the truth. But it is not just 2 + 3 = 5. No, not at all. It brings about such a transformation, such an adornment in the whole of your personality. Whole of your personality is adorned by it. This is what happens. So here also, he is going to enunciate something like 27 or 29 virtues. Just listen what they are. Most of you are devotees, and as devotees, have you ever paid attention to these inner spiritual and philosophical embellishments to your system, your personality? Sarvato manaso asangam adau sangam cha sadhushu. What are the practices the disciple or the devotee should undergo in order to acquire, possess and display Bhagavata dharmas? Sarvataha, towards all the objects and entities in the world. Manasaha, for the mind. Asangam. Sangha means delusional clinging to the things of the world. Delusional clinging even to the children, to the parents, to the brothers, to the sisters, to the house, to the property, whatever form of wealth or profession you have no delusional clinging. Swamiji, why are you saying delusional clinging? I will say, I should say, and you should hear. What is that? Our body is mortal. Any time it may fall. It falls also. We are preyed by a number of diseases now. Today I was reading in the newspaper, most of the diseases which had already fled, disappeared, they are reappearing now. The society is not very safe. We have this fever, that fever, rat fever, swine fever, so many things are there. So our body itself mortal, it is infected by a number of infections. Now we are clinging to all these things, and all the human relationships, they are also equally subject to diseases. And is this clinging justified? What is the real clinging that we must have in order to liberate ourselves? Sarvato manaso asangam. So first of all you learn, instead of being unnecessarily clinging delusionally to things, you must keep away from them. Take away that delusional clinging. Asangam. Adau sangam cha sadhushu. In order to cultivate this, stabilize this, what should you do? Take your fondness away from wherever it is and direct it and focus it on the wise people, the devotionally great people, the people who are given to Srimad Bhagavatam, reading it, reciting it, reflecting upon it, explaining it, disseminating it. Not only Srimad Bhagavatam, we have the Vedic Upanishads, as I said, Bhagavad Gita, as I said, and so many other spiritual and allied texts. People who are given to reading them, explaining them, such people have fondness for them, an intimate association. Adau sangam cha sadhushu. Initially it is necessary. Dayam maitrim prashrayam cha bhuteshu adha yathojidam. Sangha generally means, as I said, clinging but underscored by a delusion. It is not an enlightened association. It is a deluded association. Here it means what? Sangha means associational intimacy. What is the difference between members of the family and outside? Have you thought about it? With our members of the family, with members of our family, right from the beginning, we are associated with them. Each member thinks that he is the member of my family. Right from the birth. An elder brother, he has an younger brother. So right from the birth of the younger brother, he is associated with the elder one. Our father and mother, no doubt, we are born from them. So it is an impact that comes to you by virtue of an intimate association. We say swajanas. It is just like cutting water. The water cannot be separated. You may cut, but it will not be separated. In the same manner, there is an unbreakable bond between the people. But that is underscored by a delusion. This is what ordinary people have towards all the things that they have. Family, members, property and other things, possession. By its very nature, it is binding. The father and the mother will not tell the children the way of getting out of the shackles of the mind. A brahmacharini came to our ashram years back. When the brahmacharini was coming over here, there was a discussion that took place in the home. And the parents, particularly the father, was asking, why are you going? What is the trouble, etc., etc. So this person seems to have told the father, my dear father, you have given birth to me. You have educated me. I have got a job, everything is all right. But have you ever told me to get rid of the bondage that I have? Can you instruct me on that? As long as you are unable to instruct, I am going to a place where I will get this instruction and I will be able to free my mind. This was the answer given. Just imagine how effective and true is the answer.